It was a must-win game for Syracuse tonight inside the Dome, and even with their top scorer spending almost the entire night on the bench, the Orange kept things competitive against NC State. With NCAA tournament hopes hanging in the balance for both sides, the Wolfpack was able to come out on top and leave Central New York with a crucial victory. While the path to March for the Orange now gets even tougher, who stepped up when Syracuse needed it the most, and where does Jim Boeheim's squad go from here? We'll answer all that and more on Orange Press Pass, and it starts right now. Welcome inside another edition of Orange Press Pass. I'm Mike Adzima, joined tonight by Nick Kuzma and Noah Cierzan. Syracuse falling to NC State in a crucial game in the Dome, 79-74. A big game for both teams for NCAA tournament hopes, and we're going to have highlights coming up right now in a second, guys. But first, just the initial reactions from that game. It was a crucial win for Syracuse that they didn't get.
Absolutely brutal, Mike. It's the game they needed.
And look, it started right on.
It started on cue. Buddy Boeheim hitting the three for Syracuse for the first basket of the game. But then, not even 3 minutes in, Elijah Hughes, the Orange's top scorer, going out. And he would not return in this one, and NC State took full advantage. Devon Daniels with the posterization there. And then Markel Johnson hitting a big three for the Wolfpack. They would lead for a lot of that first half, going down low. DJ Fundermonk with the dunk for the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack just pouring it on. CJ Bryce hitting a big three there. They would be up 20-11 at that point. But then the Orange storming back a little bit. Merrick Dolezaj lobbing it to Barana Sidibe, who puts it in. And SU would take a 25-23 lead right there, but then NC State coming back and establishing that they own this first half. Devon Daniels getting the alley-oop of his own there. NC State up 4 at halftime. Going into the second half, Joe Girard III, he really stepped up in this one. 30 points. The most by a freshman in any game in Dome history. The Syracuse freshman, the upstate New York native, banking one off the glass there. He had a night to remember for him, and Marek Dolezaj getting a jumper there. Syracuse taking the lead there, 64-59. But then Devon Daniels, another big jumper. He had a big night on the other side for the Wolfpack. He had over 20 points. Devon Daniels again with the layup there. NC State taking a 1-point lead at that point. And then what would be the dagger? CJ Bryce with the three. NC State would go up 7 at that point, and they would win it 79-74. Back here inside the CitrusTV studios for Orange Press Pass, Mike Adzima, joined by Nick Kuzma and Noah Cierzan. We'll have Jonathan Hoppe coming up to us live from the Dome ever since. Guys, Joe Girard, he had a great night.
Absolutely great night. He's, like you said, most points for any freshman in Dome history. He's stepping in there for Elijah Hughes. The Orange still could not get it done tonight.
Yeah, he scores 30 points, his career high. Weird for him, though, he's 1 for 10 from behind the arc, which is totally unlike what Joe Girard has done all season. Interesting to see he did it in a different way. He was getting to the hoop a lot, and he was getting to the free throw line more importantly, and we know he's a great shooter from the charity stripe, converting those chances.
Yeah, career night for Joe Girard III, but it wouldn't be enough to get the Orange the win. Syracuse basketball reporter Jonathan Hoppe joining us now live from the Dome. And Jonathan, my first question is, obviously we have to talk about Elijah Hughes. He left the game after about 3 minutes with an apparent groin injury, would not return. How did the attitude amongst the Syracuse players change once they realized they wouldn't have their main scorer for the rest of this game?
Mike, the guys reacted exactly how you think they would. When the best player goes down right before the biggest game of the season up to this point, somebody's got to step up. And for the most part, the Orange did. Joe Girard with a career night. Quincy Guerrier with a career night. Buddy Boeheim was a bit off, and he said, I need to be better, especially without Elijah. But for the most part, they could have won this game if it wasn't for that 15-2 NC State run in the final few minutes. They probably would have won the game. So overall, you got to be happy with how the Orange responded to Hughes being out. That's a tough blow. He's Mr. Everything, statistically and beyond. So when you lose Hughes, you're going to expect some growing pains. And we saw that, but the Orange still in a position to win the game.
Well, Jonathan, you said it. Bad night for the Orange, but good night for Quincy Guerrier. What did Coach Boeheim say about number 1 after his career-high 16 points tonight?
Nick, Quincy was great tonight. Jim Boeheim loved his play, and he's been tough on Quincy for most of this season. But keep this in mind. Guerrier played 37 minutes. 37 when he's used to playing around 20 a game. So Boeheim said he just ran out of gas towards the end of that game, and that's why he didn't play as well down the stretch. So overall, a good night for Quincy, but still, you want to see him improve. He missed a lot of shots right close to the basket. So many missed layups in this game, and that ultimately cost the Orange.
Hoppy, Joe Girard has a big game in this one, stepping up, kind of filling in for Elijah Hughes, but he does it in a lot of different ways, slashing to the basket. He had a lot of threes that he took, but they're a little more ill-advised. So what did Coach Boeheim have to say about his freshman guard after the game?
Well, Noah, they needed Girard to be great, and he was sensational. His best night in a Syracuse uniform so far, a career-high 30 points for him, but he was only 1 for 10 from downtown. That's what Boeheim said after the game. He was great, but we need him to make more threes. 1 for 10 is not going to cut it. As a team, you only make 3 threes. Really, so many things in this game. How did they almost win? Rama Sidibe fouls out again. Boeheim couldn't hit a shot. The whole team couldn't hit a 3, and somehow they were in position to win this game against a solid ACC opponent. Ultimately, though, 6 home losses. That's not a good look for this team. When it comes down to Selection Sunday, if they're even on the bubble, that could be a deciding factor. They've got to get wins, and they've got to get them fast. But when is Hughes going to come back? That's the question now. Boeheim says he's unsure if he'll play on Saturday. They really won't know until then. We'll have to wait and see, guys.
Jonathan Hoppy joining us live from the Dome. Thanks, Jonathan. And Hoppy talked about it there for a second when we asked him the question about Elijah Hughes. Obviously, the Orange not having their top scorer for this game is a huge thing that we have to discuss here. So how do you guys think this game turns out differently with if Hughes plays and if he's out for a long period of time? How does it affect his team?
Well, first of all, I got to address the fact that Coach Boeheim saying that he doesn't know his status going forward, that should be very scary for SU fans. He's that big of an impact player, 19.4 points, second most in the ACC. His absence was so notable. In fact, you could maybe argue that's what lost in the game. Him not being in the game, they lose the game. Cause, effect.
Well, yeah, and injuries happen in basketball. The interesting thing I saw in this one was the hero of the last game, Bryson Godine, was nowhere to be found. You know, he played a little bit early on, but in this one, he plays 4 minutes, which is nothing, especially when you lose Elijah Hughes in a guard. You saw a lot of play out of the big man, so I was honestly kind of questioning Boeheim on that one, not getting Godine in it at all. But look, obviously not having Elijah Hughes is just terrible for this team, and they really need him to get healthy since, you know, coming into this one, people are like, this is kind of a must-win game. You got to know next one is definitely a must-win at this point for Syracuse.
Yeah, and if they don't have Elijah Hughes again in that Florida State game coming up this weekend, that just could be a lot of trouble for the Orange. Anyway, coming up next on Orange Press Pass, Noah breaks down Syracuse's tough night on defense, and we discuss the Orange's poor performance in shooting from beyond the arc, so don't go anywhere.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where did cats go on vacation? New York.
Welcome back into Orange Press Pass. Look, we just talked about the big effect of Elijah Hughes not playing in this game on offense. Obviously, he scores a ton of points, averaging a shade over 19 points per game. But I want to take a look at the defense, specifically how the 2-3 zone played differently in Hughes' absence. Let's roll the tape here. This is when Hughes is in the game. Look, he plays really high. The defense is almost like a 3-2, covers all that space, and is able to come down the court, get that steal, and get a basket in transition. But now we're going to take a look at today when Hughes wasn't in the game. Right here, look. NC State passing the ball around. They're able to get it in the middle, hand off. They're driving, and let's pause it right here. 3 SU defenders collapse on this one. You also have Bryson Godine off the screen, so 4 guys on one side of the court, and then Marek Dolezaj is all by himself to cover 2 guys. He closes out there, and it forces Sidibe for a heavy closeout on the 3, and they end up following on that shot, giving the Wolfpack 3 free throws. And this is just something that will happen against Florida State on Saturday if Elijah Hughes is not healthy by then. Look, the 2-3 zone, although Elijah Hughes doesn't play on top of it, he covers a lot of space on the baseline, generating steals and overall just making the zone much better as far as coverage goes. Mike, back to you.
You know, we battle hard. Hopefully we get Elijah back. We'll see. We don't know what's going to happen with him, so we won't know until probably Saturday whether he'll be able to go. But you know, just things like that happens. It's unusual. I've never had a player in 44 years get hurt in the warm-ups, but first time for everything, I guess. You know, we're not making shots at the three-point line. We're making 2s, but we're really just not. We're not making enough shots at the three-point line, and that's something that is important for us to win these kind of games. Well, we just put the ball in his hands. Him and Marek, we put the ball in their hands more. And Joe got it going. He was really good. I mean, he's playing against good defensive players, and he really, he kept us in the game. He kept us in the game. He just can't make his threes. I mean, he had a great game. Obviously, he had a great game, but you know, he's 1 for 10 from the three-point line. He can make those. You know.
Back inside Orange Press Pass, Mike Adzima with Nick Kuzma and Noah Cierzan. Thanks for the good breakdown at the beginning of this, Noah. Coach Boeheim there, he held a pretty brief post-game press conference. He did not sound too happy after this game that was really looked at as a must-win game for his squad.
No, only 2 to 3 minutes for Boeheim. He clearly was agitated, frustrated, huge losses.
Well, yeah, and there's no reason for him to be happy because when you have your star guy go out, you hope that somebody steps up, but nobody did. Specifically, you look at, you know Joe Girard's going to do his thing. Quincy had a great game, but where was Barama Sidibe? I know we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but 2 points, like, come on, you're a junior. You think he has the potential to step up a little bit when somebody big goes out. Boeheim can't be happy with that.
And you mentioned Barama Sidibe. He was one of 3 Syracuse players that fouled out in this game. Foul trouble been something that we've seen Jim Boeheim's Syracuse teams get into a lot in the last couple of years. It's been another trend going in this year. I mean, just fouls. When these guys get out, guys like Sidibe and Dolezaj, they don't have a lot of depth at the big man position to fill in for it.
Not at all. This is a story that's old as time at this point. Syracuse getting into foul trouble, having to put someone like Jesse Edwards in, and then they suffer in the paint. Again, Marek Dolezaj coming in, getting 4 fouls. Barama Sidibe fouling out again. What else is new?
Well, and like you said, Jesse Edwards, he's been playing more recently because of the foul trouble, but he's not ready to play. And it's because Boeheim did not develop him earlier in the season when he could have, and now he's got him playing in really important, crucial ACC games that they have to win if they want to make it to March Madness. And you can tell that Edwards is just not up to the standards of the ACC.
And so far this season, the Orange have had some pretty good nights when it comes to shooting from beyond the arc, but tonight was not one of those nights. Syracuse needed guys to step up like Buddy Boeheim, like Joe Girard. With Elijah Hughes out, I mean, Joe Girard had a great game. We talked about it, but not really great from 3 points, and neither did Buddy Boeheim.
Mike, not really great is being super nice to Syracuse. They were terrible. They shot 16.67. That's about 17% from beyond the arc. And when JG3 only goes 1 for 10, I understand the young man had a great night. Best night for a freshman, arguably in the Dome, in many, many years. But you gotta go better than 1 for 10, Joe.
Well, and the reason he went 1 for 10 was purely because shot selection. Look, when you're coming down the court and you're just hucking up contested three-pointers, not even the best three-point shooters rather, in the country are going to hit those shots. So I can't blame JG3 for only making 1 shot because, he's got to take better shot selection.
How about this, though, Noah? No one else besides Buddy or JG3 takes a three. I understand they're not great shooting the three ball besides those two and Elijah, but you'd like to think someone else could chuck one up.
Well, and the reason why is because when Elijah Hughes isn't in the game, the ball is very stagnant. They don't get the ball moving, and guys just aren't moving overall on offense, so they're not generating open shots, and they're forcing themselves to take really tough contested shots.
Well, guys, up next, I hear on Orange Press Pass, Nick gives his thoughts on where the Orange go from here, and we try to answer who really beat Syracuse tonight.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back. We've heard this story before. Syracuse heads into March in the bubble. Will they get into the NCAA tournament and make a run, or is SU off the NIT? Well, for the first time in several years, at least my collegiate ones, it looks like fans on the Hill will not have to worry about looking at those pesky Joe Lunardi bracketology projections. After tonight's loss to NC State, that mountain might be just too high to climb for Syracuse to get into the tourney. When we look back at this season, it's the home losses. Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and now NC State. Just too many L's against average and mediocre competition. SU has also yet to find that signature win. That win at UVA suddenly is looking much less important as the Cavaliers struggle to stay above 500 in the ACC. On paper, this season looks to be over, barring a top 10 upset next week or an ACC tournament run, which is increasingly unlikely as the team is now sputtering. Tonight was a microcosm of the season. The Orange shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I don't know. I mean, they banked in a three, hit some more shots than we did. We only had 3 threes. They had 11, and we still probably could have and should have won. But I mean, we fought hard. It's just we got to figure out how to win those games.
Yeah, definitely. I think build confidence for a lot of players on the team, especially when your leading scorer is not playing. So we got to keep going. I don't know if he's going to play on Saturday, so we got to stay positive, keep working hard, and be ready for the game on Saturday.
You guys going stretches all this year?
Welcome back to Orange Press Pass. Mike Adzima with Nick Kuzma and Noah Cierzan. The players there, Nick, you talked about this season, the tournament hopes kind of being in a pretty dark place, practically over at this point, but the players still keeping their heads up.
Yeah, no, they are keeping their heads up. That's a good thing. Buddy Boeheim was saying we're just going to keep going one game at a time after the game. But you got to get down to brass tacks. This is just too many bad losses.
Well, I'm glad they're optimistic because I don't know about you, Nick.
I'm not optimistic.
I'm not optimistic at all for this team because, look, they got to go to Florida State this weekend. They got to go to Louisville next week. They got to win one of those games at this point. You can't drop ACC games against NC State and still make the tournament. So they got to go on the road and beat a really good team in either the Seminoles or the Cardinals. So I'm glad the team is feeling great, especially without Hughes. Me, not so much.
Yeah, this game against NC State, a crucial, game that they could have got a big win over a kind of a middle-tier ACC team, and now got to go on the road on the next 2 games against 2 top 10 teams in the country. They're really the cream of the crop in the ACC conference. But let's take a look at Syracuse now, and 2 of the guys, Barama Sidibe, who we mentioned fouled out earlier, and Quincy Guerrier, who's found himself getting more into this lineup for Jim Boeheim's squad, but he's not really a starter yet. But let's kind of discuss that. Is Barama Sidibe's time as a starter in the starting 5 coming to an end with Quincy Guerrier kind of rising to prominence, Noah?
Well, I would say totally, and it comes down to this. The only reason to have Sidibe in that starting 5 would be for his defense. and he falls out every single game after game. On top of that, he only had 2 points. He's honestly an offensive liability at this point, and Quincy has proven, like, look, he looked a little rough earlier in the season, but he's developed his game. You saw he had 16 points tonight, and he looked fantastic, not only on the offensive end, but defensively. He's very athletic, and he can play on that wing. He can play in the middle if he needs to. Barama has no business being in the starting five for Jim Boeheim's squad.
I completely agree. I've defended Barama all season. The first game, UVA, I was here at this desk, and I said he should be starting at the 5 because of his size. And Syracuse doesn't have anyone else really like that, of that bulk and stature to stand in the paint. However, 2 points is not good enough. You should be stepping up in a game where a fellow junior like Elijah Hughes goes down. You need to be stepping up, and you need to be getting valuable points. I'm not asking for a 25-point performance. I'm saying you need to have at least 10. You need to have upwards of 6, 7, 8 rebounds, and you had 3. How are you upwards of 6, 10, and you only have 3 rebounds? I think it's time for Quincy Guerrier to step in at the 5. Barama, he can get some much-needed bench minutes, and 10 rebounds to 3 rebounds tells the story for me. But Sidibe has to go.
Yeah, and Guerrier, you see a double-double, tonight with Sidibe. You mentioned 2 points and only 3 rebounds. He doesn't really have the size that Sidibe has, but he's showing the hustle and he's showing the effort. But let's get down to brass tacks, guys, and talk about who really beat Syracuse tonight. We'll take a look at NC State first. Their guard, Devon Daniels, he had 23 points, the leading scorer for the Wolfpack tonight. He really showed up. Devin Daniels, he really showed up for NC State tonight.
Yeah, he really did. He was their top scorer. He also provided 3 assists, 3 steals on the defensive end. And you mentioned the highs, posterization. He's the type of player that's going to bring the energy to NC State to come in here and defeat Syracuse in the Dome, which is not easy to do.
Well, yeah, and what I saw out of Daniels is you saw him get that nice poster right there. He was able to drive, and what that opened for the Wolfpack was the entire three-point line, because Syracuse started collapsing on him, and then he would just kick out for the 3. You mentioned those 3 assists. So I think Daniels starting off hot opened the entire offense for the Wolfpack, and was a big reason why they were able to sneak out with the dub.
And we'll look at another guy for the Wolfpack, another guard for NC State, C.J. Bryce. He hit kind of the dagger three-pointer late in this game in the second half, and he went 4 of 6 from three-point range tonight. Another big factor in the Wolfpack pulling away.
Well, and he was almost on the receiving end of Daniel's success early on, because in the second half, he was able to hit those huge shots. You saw him behind the arc. He was hitting those threes, and he was also playing very well as a distributor. So what I saw out of him was great play out of a great guard for the Wolfpack.
My argument's simple. Mike mentioned already. Who's the guy that beat Syracuse? It might just be the guy who hits the dagger 3 ball.
Well, C.J. Bryce had the dagger 3 ball, but Syracuse wasn't really hitting any 3 balls tonight, so we got to ask the question, did the Orange beat themselves?
I think that's definitely an argument to make, and I'm going to lean towards yes. Specifically, I think Elijah Hughes' injury is what defeated Syracuse today. Jim Boeheim said he's never had a player get hurt in warm-ups, and then with under 3 minutes, Elijah Hughes was like, I can't play anymore. I was hurt in warm-ups. And that's what they missed his 9.4 points. They missed his close to 3 3-pointers a game. And the score, it wasn't that, much of a score differential. He plays in the game, they probably win.
Yeah, pregame warm-ups beat Syracuse. So for all you bettors out there, whoever had that prop bet, you're pretty happy right now. Look, Elijah Hughes, he scores. He's a great defensive player. He is the absolute leader for this Syracuse squad. He gets all the hustle plays. He's out there diving on the court, putting his body on the line, and that's something you just can't replicate. You can try to replicate his scoring. You can try to replicate his effectiveness everywhere, but you cannot replicate the mentality that he brings game in and game out on the court, and that ended up hurting the Syracuse in the end.
Yeah, Syracuse, Elijah Hughes was really missed out on that court tonight. Anyway, almost done here on Orange Press Pass, but don't go anywhere, because coming up, we take a look ahead at Syracuse's next couple of games, plus our analysts give their final thoughts.
They took over my bedroom. Come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay? find her.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
All right, Monroe, you ready? Monroe. Here we go, the butterfly. Ready? Ooh.
Welcome back inside Orange Press Pass. Mike Adzima joined by Nick Kuzma and Noah Cierzan. Syracuse falling to NC State 79-74 in this one. Let's take a look around the other games in the ACC tonight. We know Virginia beat Notre Dame there in overtime. Nick, you talked about earlier that Syracuse win over Virginia. Not looking so great at the moment. Wake Forest, who Syracuse narrowly beat this last weekend, getting the win over North Carolina. North Carolina comes to the Dome in a couple weeks.
Yeah, North Carolina does come to the Dome in a couple weeks. I thought they were going to be playing better basketball with Cole Anthony coming back, but losing by that much to Wake Forest, a team that's just not very good. Virginia, this game really doesn't affect much. I know it was a Quadrant 4 win for Syracuse when they beat them at then number 18 UVA, but a 1-point game win over Notre Dame at home just doesn't matter that much.
Well, yeah, the game I look at up there that's really interesting is North Carolina getting destroyed, which
that's crazy.
When Cole Anthony was back against Duke, you're like, oh, they're back. That's one game for Syracuse where I kind of switched that from a win to a loss. So I think Syracuse might be able to actually take that one. And, their road to the tournament is very long, but hopefully that makes it a lot easier if Carolina continues to struggle.
I think it's an easy win, but Syracuse just lost to NC State at home, albeit without Elijah Hughes.
Yeah, so we'll take a quick look at the ACC standings after Syracuse's loss to NC State tonight. Syracuse was in the mix of that top 5. Now NC State jumps ahead. You see Louisville, Duke, Florida State all in the top 3 there, some of the top 10 teams in the country, and Syracuse has to face 2 of them coming up in the next couple games.
Yeah, that's brutal just when you look at that. Number 5 and number 8, both on the road for Syracuse coming up.
Yeah, the ACC stinks. That's my big takeaway from this standings. They'll have 3 top teams in the tournament. The rest of the ACC not great, which almost makes this Syracuse season a little bit worse when you look at, this was a rather weak ACC conference this year, and you really could have seen them sneak into the tournament. They still can, but you got to get it done against the mid-tier ACC team, something that Syracuse has not been able to do this year.
Yeah, throwback to 8-9 teams making the tournament out of the ACC. Not a shot anymore.
I know. Now, quickly, Syracuse got to play one of those top-tier ACC teams, Florida State, coming up this weekend. Quick thoughts before that next matchup.
Yeah, my final thoughts going into my thoughts going into this one is good luck, Syracuse. If they don't have Elijah Hughes, my word.
Yeah, and Florida State, they got a lot of great big men, which I think could pose a huge problem.
Enormous problem.
Enormous problem for a Syracuse team that, they don't have a lot of depth there. What depth they have falls out of every single game they play. Barama Sidibe will fall out of that game.
Lock it in.
Marek might fall out of that game. It's going to be a really tough one down in Tallahassee for the Orange.
All right, Nick, final thought after this NC State game tonight.
Yeah, my final thought is simply it all comes down to the next week. At Florida State, at Louisville, they're going to have to beat one of those teams to get to the NCAA tournament. Good luck if you don't have Elijah Hughes.
Yeah, for me, it's all about Elijah Hughes. He's got to go to the doctor and get some miracle treatment. I don't know.
Dr. Oz?
Yeah, he needs to go to Dr. Oz. I don't know what it's going to be for Elijah Hughes, but look, he's got to get healthy because what I saw against the Wolfpack tonight was that the Orange have no chance against Florida State and Louisville if they do not have Elijah Hughes. And, if they don't beat Florida State or Louisville, they have no chance at the tournament. So we're going to do a little math here.
Let's go.
If they don't have Elijah Hughes, they're not making the tournament. Boom, he's got to get healthy.
There we go.
Yeah, not having Elijah Hughes if they don't have him going into this next stretch of tough games, it could be lethal for Syracuse. The Orange falling to NC State 79-74. For Noah Cierzan and Nick Kuzma, I'm Mike Adzima. Thank you for joining us tonight, Syracuse, on Orange Press Pass.